And the closer.
Before we begin, I would like to point out the exits in the room, right over here. I also want to ask the audience to please turn off all electronic devices or put them in airplane mode. And thank you in advance for helping us maintain a respectful, safe, and civil forum space. Welcome to the City of Longmont Candidate Forum, co-hosted by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County, Longmont Public Media, and our co-sponsor, EcoCycle. My name is Martine Eleanor. I am a proud member of the League, and I am pleased to serve as moderator for today's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization For over 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government. EcoCycle's mission is to innovate, implement, and advocate for local and global zero-waste solutions to foster a more regenerative, equitable, and climate-resilient future. Neither the League, Longmont Public Media, or EcoCycle support or oppose political candidates or parties. Now to the forum. The City of Longmont is governed by a 7-member City Council, including the mayor. The mayor is elected to serve a 2-year term, and each council member is elected to serve a 4-year term. For the coming November 4th election, voters will be asked to elect a new mayor, 1 city council member from Ward 2, and 2 at-large city council members. For the next hour, we will be hearing from the 4 mayoral candidates. The format will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then ask them questions that have been submitted online by the Longmont community. Please note that in some instances, our lead question reviewers have combined several similar questions into one question on that topic. In most instances, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. Please do not do any actions to interrupt or disrupt the forum. Please refrain from clapping, booing, or otherwise showing your approval or disapproval of any response. The candidates are seated in the order they will appear on the general election. Now to the opening statements and questions. For the opening statements, we will begin with Mayor candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Good morning. My name is Susie Hidalgo Faring, and I sit here with you this morning as mayoral candidate for Longmont. My husband and I have raised our families here for the last 20 years, and since 2019, I've proudly served as the Ward 3 representative, and since 2023, I've served as the mayor pro tem. In this role, I've worked alongside the mayor, attended meetings, joined her, as well as stepped into the role of mayoral duties, worked closely with the city manager, as well as working and connecting with residents outside of Ward 3 to really understand the whole purpose of, the whole dynamics of this role as mayor. In my position, I have 15 seconds left. Okay, so I really want to focus on reliability of core services and infrastructure, protecting affordability, as well as managing how and where we develop, ensuring that we don't impact strain infrastructure, neighborhoods, or environment. Thank you.
Candidate Levison.
Thank you, League, EcoCycle, and Longmont Public Media for hosting this event. My name is Sarah Levison, and the one thing that makes me an outstanding candidate is experience. What is experience? Experience is leverage. What is leverage? Well, I have 28 years of experience living in this town, and I can use my leverage of knowledge, relationships, and skills to be an effective mayor. You can look at my past track record, not enough time to talk about the 25 or 30 organizations I've worked with, some like El Comité for 17 years as a board member, but I can tell you that experience and leveraging skills, relationships, and knowledge is what gets projects across the finish line, what helps put fires out, and has people coming back to our city being very satisfied with their interactions, and also retains residents and employers.
Candidate Christ.
Good morning. My name is Diane Christ. I'm currently the councilwoman for Ward 1, and we've had some successes there in my first 2 years on council. You can check them out at dianechrist.com. Thank you so much for having us here today. I so appreciate the League of Women Voters. This is always a fun forum and great questions usually. Today I want to talk about a little bit about myself. I'm an accountant. I work in the local economy and with startups. And so I want to talk about how to build Longmont back. And particularly this morning, I want to talk about the missing middle. I think one of the things that we've missed recently over the last 2 years is looking at how to start and build a family here. I know for myself, I came here 30 years ago for the beauty and stayed for the opportunity. And I'd like to see our children be able to do the same. I think a lot of that has to do with how we approach our business aspect, but maintaining our beauty and also our scientific edge in terms of innovation and technology. Thank you so much for having me today.
Candidate Dalal.
My name is Shaquille Dalal. I'm running for mayor because local government is supposed to be the most effective and responsive level of government. Unfortunately, in the country, we have falling trust in government, and this is an existential threat to our democracy. I believe that we have a responsibility to restore that trust by showing people that we can effectively address their problems. I've spoken to thousands of Longmonters this year, and their highest concerns are our rising cost of living, our concerns about our quality of life, and the vitality of our local economy. These are not new problems, and for that reason, we cannot be trying the same old solutions. We need new people with new ideas who know how to innovate. I'm a scientist by profession. I spend my days building and testing spaceships, but public service is my passion. In my time in Longmont, I have been a political writer for the Longmont Observer. I serve on the board of the Longmont Community Foundation, and I founded an organization that advocates for housing affordability and quality of life in Longmont. I believe that we need to have a city where anyone who shows up can find the opportunity and community that they deserve.
For the first question, we will start with candidate Levison. As a city council, what can you or will you do to help people overwhelmed with the process of opening a small business?
First of all, I am a huge supporter of small and local businesses. In fact, Wednesday afternoon, I had a meet and greet for small businesses and sat and listened to their concerns. I think that other candidates will talk about red tape. It's not only red tape, it's people not understanding what the process is. I think that the city could do much better communication about what it takes to draw permits and maintain expectations of people to get things done in a timely fashion. It does the city no good to hold small and local businesses up. One business owner at the minimum wage fishbowl event said it took them 6 weeks to get a permit to put in a 220 plug so they could add another oven, bake more things, and make more retail sales tax for the city. It doesn't do us any good to hold people up. And I will form a mayor's business roundtable to address these issues.
Well, I work in the local economy and with businesses and startups, and I have to say that some of them are not small. They actually have budgets that rival the cities. But one of the issues that we're having is there's so many retail established storefronts that are empty. And a lot of that has to do with our property tax. When we removed Gallagher, we didn't come up with a good replacement for it. We were trying to correct the issue with businesses and commercial sites paying about 4 times the property tax of residential. So I believe people are still starting businesses because I do see that, but a lot of them are out of the garage, kind of like Steve Jobs with Apple computers, and those often grow into big concerns. So we need to make that transition easier in terms of getting those retail establishments filled. That retail establishments, on the sidewalk, if you will, bring a lot more foot traffic to other businesses near there. It also gives a lot of fronting for the business name, and so it's an important marketing piece for business and also important for our property tax to build the city. Thank you so much.
Candidate Dalal.
One thing that I would like us to do is to change the way that we regulate small businesses. I think much of our land development and use codes right now treats business as a nuisance as opposed to a core community asset. One thing that we can do to give local businesses a competitive advantage over the national chains who don't necessarily have to make a profit in Longmont is by giving them the advantage of proximity, by allowing complementary businesses like coffee shops and carnicerias and pediatricians inside neighborhoods so that people have the opportunity to patronize a local business by making it very easy. One thing I will say as someone who has started multiple businesses and nonprofits is that the paperwork is easy if you know what to do, but the challenge is the uncertainty. The penalties can be quite high, or at least be perceived to be high, if you don't follow them. And so it is really important for us to lay out the process very clearly and to reduce the uncertainty in that process, because it stops people from doing things that they would otherwise do to contribute to the community.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you. So one of the things that I've seen, and I'd really like to replicate this for our small businesses as well, is during my tenure on council, is working with our neighborhood and community resources department to expand our landlord alliance to really incorporate tenants, so renters, and having those know your rights and know how to navigate the process through HOAs. If you are a tenant or even a resident in an HOA, we recently had a training and a community outreach with that. I would like to see something like that for small businesses that really help people who are getting into these, the entrepreneurship and really want to, and it's new for them. So having somebody from the city or having them connect with mentors to help them guide them through that process. And I think, we're seeing great success in the neighborhood realm. So let's transfer that over to the businesses as well.
The next question comes from our co-sponsor for today's forum, EcoCycle. Studies have shown that applying compost to soils increases drought resiliency, supports regenerative agriculture, and reduces methane from landfills. Do you support increasing the diversion of food scraps and yard trimmings from landfills into beneficial uses, such as making compost? What ideas do you have to further increase diversion of these organic materials and promote the use of finished compost on agricultural, municipal, commercial, and residential landscapes? Candidate Christ.
I do support composting. In fact, I compost for my own garden. I think one of the things we need to look at in town is a farm park. We have that nice park over there on Weld County Road and 66. It's currently open space that's being leased out for farming. It's slated to become a park, but it would be nice to transition it into a park that kids could come and see how farming activities occur, including composting. Now, that isn't going to take care of all of the city's composting. We're going to have to look at a bigger solution for all the yard scraps, and a lot of it is the yard waste in terms of grass and what have you. When I lived on the farm, we used to feed the grass to the cows, so we didn't have too much trouble with it. But I think we have a solution here in the future, not necessarily with open space land, but if we could partner with either one of the counties or with the landfill to have an organic space, I think we could get our composting done quickly.
Candidate Dalal.
In 2023, the city of Longmont made a pledge to reduce to divert 75% of our trash from the landfill by 2030. I think it's important for us to live up to this commitment because it goes to my earlier point about trusting government. One of the major components of what goes into our trash is food waste, and so increasing the amount of that gets composted is really important, both for the environmental benefits, but also for living up to our commitments. One of the ways that we can promote the use of compost and get it into people's yards and prevent droughts and also use it more effectively is to change laws in our city code which promote the use of non-native plants. For example, native grasses require growing more than 9 inches tall in order to complete their reproductive life cycle. However, our city code says that if your grass is more than 9 inches tall, the city can mow it for you and then charge you for it, right? And this is a case where we are promoting the use of exotic plants as opposed to native plants. And a core part of doing that is allowing people to use compost with these native grasses.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Okay. Yes, I support the important, as I firmly believe the importance of composting and looking at how we can address the amount of food waste into the landfills. I'm currently sit on the RCAB, the Resource Conservation Advisory Board. So working with other, representatives from Green Girl, EcoCycle, as well as all municipal leaders throughout the Boulder County, and looking at solutions, things that are working in different communities that we can bring into our own, sharing out what's happening to spread what we're doing here to create a robust composting system. And so that's it. So I believe that we work with our partners to help leverage that. I currently teach at a school that is a green school, a Green Star school. So we do compost our organic and, from our little garden, and as well as the grasses and our food waste. So leveraging with the school district as well.
Candidate Levison.
Thank you for this question. I am in favor of composting. I compost myself. In order to increase composting among households and businesses, again, I think we need a big education campaign. One of the reasons why the city restricted what we're composting right now is that there's too much contamination. Composting is good if everyone knows what to do. And until we get to that stage, and again, a big communication and education campaign is necessary so that we get clean compost. The other part of composting is, what do we do if we're enormously successful? In the city of Toronto, even multifamily apartment buildings compost. What the city of Toronto found is that they produce so much compost that their compost receiver ended up sending it to the landfill. We need to close the system. We open it with people using composting, including businesses, and then we close it by making sure the compost is used.
The next question will have 90 seconds for response time. After a great deal of press and public engagement about the proposal to exchange some of Longmont's open space property, the Distill property, with the Toll Public Works property in order to build a regional compost facility with Boulder County and develop city infrastructure, it appears the City Council has tabled that decision. Do you support this land swap? Why or why not? Should all proposals that involve selling, trading, or disposing of open space land go to voters? We'll start with candidate Dalal.
Yes, I support the land swap. This is an unpopular position, but I believe that it is the right thing to do to meet our environmental goals and also to, again, restore trust in government. The residents of the city of Longmont have repeatedly and strenuously said that we support our open space program, and they also have said that we support environmental goals and ensuring that we live up to our environmental obligations as a community. Doing the land swap in order to facilitate a regional composting facility is a win for the open space program because it results in more net open space. It also is a win for the environment by promoting composting. It's a win for our agricultural system by making more of that composting available and by allowing us to put more things in the compost and increasing our waste diversion. The main argument against the composting facility is the idea that there is a precedent that is set. I think if we set the precedent that we don't live up to our commitments, and if we set the precedent that we don't trust City Council in 20 years to do something that is allowed by law, then we have already failed as a democracy. It is up to the voters and it is up to us 20 years from now to ensure that we are just as attentive as we are today. We cannot stop ourselves from doing good things now because we are afraid that someone else will do something bad in the future, because that is how we have created our current culture of government inaction.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Okay. I did not approve the land swap, and there were several reasons why, and a lot of it had to do with the negotiations. So it was really with Wholesome. And it's really understanding the process, that it's much larger than what a simple land swap would entail. But there were actually several moving parts where we were at with negotiations, those net benefits no longer stood. So there's another component too, as we talk about building public trust. And so when we are, as an organization, making these changes on the side, when we've locked in dollars for a particular space to be open space, and those spaces are not selected lightly. They have agricultural habitat. They have long-term value. Is also looking at, living a block away from the flood, where we had riverfront property for a while, and so looking at all those environmental impacts to that were part of my decision-making process. So yes, that public trust was something that was very important to me. I do approve, and I'm working with staff as well as the mayor in looking at putting on a ballot measure that any time disposition of open space should be going to the vote of the people. When I moved forward to fund open space in perpetuity, that passed by 75% of the vote. So that tells me that open space is something that's very valuable to this community.
Candidate Levison.
It's a very interesting question. When people talk about trust in government, when you make a promise to voters to say we will use the money as you directed, open space tax money, that's a sacred trust. The way to undo trust in government is to just say, well, we have some more important things we want to do with it. Fundamentally, Longmont does not have the responsibility to solve the county-wide problem of where to locate composting. If the county is willing to pay us $10 or $20 million, then we could maybe find another spot. But I don't see that there's a ROI for Longmont in this. And frankly, putting every proposal that does a change with open space on the ballot is costly, and it also brings a tremendous amount of pressure and outside interest groups into an election on the for and against side. And it may not elevate the voters' voices to truly be able to make a decision. It has been an established policy that the city council and the mayor make these decisions. You have to elect the right people to trust them. The other part of it is we have 6 or 8 years. You have to also look at council members who are willing not to just do something that's expedient to get them reelected in 4 years or 2 years, but something long-term. When we're far out of office, is it still a good decision?
Candidate Christ.
This is a good question and great comments from the panel. I have to agree with many things that are said. I guess I will start with Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring's comments. We can't discuss some of the negotiations that occurred, but one of the things that I was able to help with in that discussion was to throw in some business acumen when it comes to negotiations. When it comes to open space, we have a contract. So coming from a business perspective, our contract with the people and with ourselves is that what we have in writing we will do, and that is keep it open space. That swath of land is our only barrier between ourselves and Boulder County open space, and the city has had a policy of keeping a little space between ourselves and the county and to just have expansion so we have some green around us, not buildings right up to the line. I have to agree that one of the things we most need to do is take a better look at how we make decisions. We need more discussion amongst ourselves. These will be public. But we need to find true answers instead of just jumping on what is the first solution. We need to delve a little bit deeper and put in some innovative and ingenuity and think what do we really want out of composting and where would that best be provided. I also agree with Candidate Levison that we don't have to serve the county. We can serve Longmont. Thank you.
Do you support the Longmont City Council holding a study session soon on single and multi-winner ranked choice voting, also known as RCV, to consider placing an RCV charter amendment question on the 2026 ballot? Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Yes, I do. I was the one who brought it up. to bring it forward. And again, through our process, it is a thoughtful decision. And where we start with a study session, we have these discussion and debates about the pros and cons of moving forward with ranked choice voting. For me, I support it because I think it really uplifts the rest of us as candidates to really vie for this seat, because you're ranking in priority of what you want to see in a leader. So I think that raises the level of conduct as well as us working together. I'm not a politician. I don't like this, the candidate stuff and campaigning things. I enjoy going door to door and having these meet and greets, and I love that. But I think if we can build that collegiality among candidates, I really believe that ranked choice voting would get us there.
Candidate Levison.
Thank you for this question. I have studied ranked choice voting and also approval voting. I think the council should do a study session, but we should look at every voting method, not just ranked choice, look at approval. I also think that doing a single charter amendment simply for ranked choice voting, we should open up and examine our charter fully, because it's not just ranked choice voting. It would also change other aspects of the charter as far as how many candidates are elected in what type of cycle. It would, it's my understanding, and I haven't seen a proposal of how would it actually work, is that our system of having a ward and at-large candidates at the same time would change. And a lot of education has to happen. Also, we need to see how it's been effective, ranked choice voting, in other municipalities. New York City has used it for 2 mayoral and council election cycles right now, and we need to do a big communication campaign before we think about instituting a voting change.
Candidate Christ.
Thank you. I have worked Boulder County elections since 2014, that is down at the headquarters. Before then, I worked at the service centers in the communities, in the neighborhoods, which was a 14, 15-hour day there. Now at the headquarters, it usually ends up being a whole month of a lot of work. I think if people knew how much time, effort, and consideration we put into elections and running fair elections, you would be very impressed and feel that we were underpaid, much like the council. And I would also say that if someone's going to propose a new voting strategy, I would ask them to work an election, work a whole month of an election. Actually go, give up your job for a time and go and work and see all the intricacies that the law requires of us. So I'm not in favor of changing our method. I will say, for those who are concerned about voting, especially the electronic aspects, vote in person and on paper. That tends to go past all the electronics in the voting process.
Candidate Dalal.
This is another area where the way that we vote dramatically hurts people's trust in government. Rather than, in our current method, rather than voting for the person who you believe best represents your views, very often we are pressured to vote for the person who we believe is the least bad, but avoids the spoiler of someone who we think is the most bad. This is not a good way to run elections. And so I firmly support ranked choice voting and believe that we should get to it by the 2027 municipal election. I think a thing that most of the public doesn't see about this is the ways that it encourages and discourages people from running for office entirely. There's a young candidate this year named Meg Thornbury who was running in the Ward 2 seat, but felt pressured to drop out of the election before the ballot was finalized because we lack ranked choice voting, and she also felt pressured to ensure that someone who she felt was the least bad as opposed to the most good candidate would be elected. And this, again, reduces trust in government and discourages people from running for office. And I think that that is bad for our democracy, and so I want us to fully explore ranked choice voting to make sure that we get the candidates that are going to be the best for representing the people.
The next question concerns housing. If raising the amount of permanently affordable housing hasn't made the city of Boulder more affordable, what are the expectations for a similar approach in Longmont? Candidate Levison.
Attainable and affordable housing is kind of a gnarly question. Housing costs are not necessarily just housing costs. What you can afford for housing is also how much does food cost? How much is childcare? Do you have $100,000 in student loans? I have a niece who lived in New York City on a very modest income because she could go around the corner and get breakfast for $6. You can't do that in Longmont. I've also found there's some interesting articles by a political hobbyist blog in Lafayette where she has gone and done a survey of some luxury market rate properties that were actually offered for less rent than what the city is building for subsidized housing. I think we need to keep evaluating what costs there are and see where the market is.
Candidate Christ.
Thank you. And thank you, Candidate Levison. Those were some very good points. It seems like the more we build, the more expensive they get. And currently, the data we have is that 80% of average median income is about $2,700 for rent or for a house payment, and that is just not affordable. One of the things we've done is we've asked for a fee in lieu if developers can't build 12% inclusionary housing, with the idea that we would take the money and build more housing. But it has had some unintended consequences, one of which is made affordable housing a little bit more segregated, and would be better to have 12% in actual neighborhoods. And I think it would be better for the developers too, in that they could make their profit and we could still have 12% with equity in those neighborhoods. So I think right project, right time not being when it's the highest inflation that we know. So check out my website. I have more information, and thank you.
Candidate Dalal.
I think it's important to avoid a scarcity mindset when it comes to housing. The reason the cost of housing is becoming higher is because we don't have enough for everyone who wants one. And because we have a capitalist society, that means that the person who gets the home is the person who can afford to pay the most for it. I support the concept of our affordable housing program, which allows either a fee in lieu or for 12% of the homes to be affordable. City Council recently did a study at raising the fee in lieu, and one of the reasons they didn't do it is because it turns out that what happens when you raise the fee in lieu is that you make the market rate housing more expensive, because what you are doing is you are requiring the developer to charge more in their for-profit units in order to subsidize the less affordable units. There are not enough subsidies in the world, whether they come from market rate or from the federal government or the state government or the local government, to solve our market problem. An important concept to understand is the idea called filtering. Essentially what studies have shown that if you build market rate homes, even if they are not affordable to that person, for every 100 market rate homes you build, you get about 70 affordable homes.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you. I think, looking at the system as a whole, there are some things that we as City Council can't control. We can't control the housing market. We can't control the cost of inflation, the price of doing business. But what we can do is we can streamline that process, and I feel like I say that a lot. But looking at what are the things that we are doing as a city that are incurring those costs, and how can we most effectively reduce those costs to develop lower priced housing stock, but as well as expanding that diversity in housing stock. Where we're looking at the True North project, and that's one piece of the puzzle. That is not the silver bullet that's going to solve the issue. But there are, we've made changes to our ADUs, and that is something I really support as we look at people wanting to live close to family. They have children with disabilities who need to live near home, or seniors. So, and keeping that family connection. So expanding those opportunities, there's several ways we could address this.
Do you have plans to help build more public transit and make the city more walkable or bikeable? Candidate Christ.
Yes, I do. I love transportation. In fact, I was 2 years on the transportation board for the city of Longmont, and that transportation board started or initiated Vision Zero with the city council, and also we kept coming back to that last mile. How do you get that last mile? I myself have to bicycle a mile to catch the bus, and I pass a lot of senior housing and realize that the seniors will never be able to bicycle to catch that bus. So we started microtransit, which is Ride Longmont, $2 a ride, and $1 if you're a senior, a child, or disabled. That has been amazingly profitable, I want to say, but more, it's been greatly used. And one of the things that we were able to do was claw back about $1.5 million from RTD tax money to help fund that, as well as we got some congressional help from Congressman Joe Neguse. So that, look for more of that going forward.
Candidate Dalal.
The most important public transit project that is already coming to Longmont in 2027 is the bus rapid transit that is going to go from North Main all the way to downtown Boulder. To understand the magnitude of this project, 20%, according to the city's transportation study, 20% of Longmonters drive to Boulder for work every single day. That is about 20,000 people, which if they're driving single occupancy cars is 20,000 cars. The best thing that we can do to get the highest return on investment on that public transit investment that is coming from RTD and the state and the city of Longmont is to ensure that as many people can use that bus rapid transit as possible. To do that, we need to make sure that it is easy to walk or bike to those bus stops, because the buses will actually be faster than cars because they will have skip lights on Colorado 119. The way that we do this is we invest deeply in our Vision Zero program and tactical urbanism to ensure that we redesign our streets as quickly as we can using experimental methods to ensure that we get to a place where it is easy and safe to walk and bike to those bus stops to get high utilization.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Okay. Councilmember Christ had alluded to a lot of the work that's already happening through City Council. I recently went to Washington, D.C. with the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition to advocate for funding as well as a coalition. So it was really several mayors from North Glen, Lafayette, all the Boulder County mayors, as well as our county commissioner. And in that, looking at bus rapid transit, Vision Zero, ensuring that we have those fundings and that mechanism available for redesigning our streets in a safer capacity. In some spaces, it's adding the flashing lights and being cognizant of where those crosswalks go for pedestrians. It's also separating out where pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, and cyclists can navigate the road safely, as well as front range passenger rail. There are several components, and I've advocated and lobbied these at the state and national level as well. And I think we're on a great path ahead. A lot of work to do.
Candidate Levison.
Well, I don't want to just talk about the plans that I have to build public transit because I don't have all the answers. What I would like to do, and I've proposed this on my website and also on my information card you can find in the lobby, is to turn a part of our capital budget, 5%, over to anybody in Longmont that wants to have a project or a idea funded. And I'm calling it budget bucks. So if the public has identified a intersection that's particularly dangerous or they feel unsafe or some improvement, I want to hear from people and I want them to identify what the impediments are for public transit, walkability, and bikeability. One of the recent improvements on Kimbark Street, which has affected me, is a four-way stop instead of a two-way and striping for pedestrians. Let's look at some low-hanging fruit first, making sure pedestrians feel safe with crosswalks that are identified. And for bikeability and walkability, Main Street, the sidewalks are banked. It's really hard to push a stroller or a wheelchair if your sidewalks are banked like that. I understand that's for runoff, but let's do that.
House Bill 24-1007 became effective July 1st of last year. It took away our city's right to limit the number of unrelated people living in a house. The goal was to make housing affordable, But if investors buy up single-family homes and turn them into multi-bedroom moneymakers, how are working families supposed to compete with that to achieve home ownership? Candidate Dalal.
So this is a place, this question is well-intentioned, but I believe it reflects a scarcity mindset for housing. Because we have a scarcity problem, the cost of housing is high because there are not enough homes for everyone who needs them. Allowing single-family homes to be converted to other types of housing is a great mechanism to create smaller, more affordable homes for people who don't have a lot of money. And just because they are not desirable for me does not mean that they are not desirable for somebody else, because anything is more desirable than sleeping in your car or sleeping in a tent. An important consequence of this law that I do wish that City Council had looked more carefully at was the ways that it loosen the restrictions on group homes in residential neighborhoods. I think a significant oversight, as those who live in that neighborhood are aware, is that by passing this law, the state loosened those restrictions, and that resulted in some unintended consequences for where group homes and sex offender homes are allowed to be in the city. Other cities were able to catch this before it was a problem, but we did not, and that has had a detrimental impact on our public safety.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Very good, thank you. So there has been some unintended consequences, and so that's where, that ability as us as a home rule city, we need to be pushing back a little at the state, and what are the impacts that's happening at the state level that are hurting our communities. And one of those was, as soon as it was brought to our attention, we tried to alleviate that as quick as possible, and that was reducing the number of sex offenders in a group home. But also looking at, that opened up another door that also addressed licensing and some disparities that are happening in the state level around registration of quality group homes that are actually very detrimental to the participants in those homes, as well as the community at large. But I believe that it's looking and working closely with our state legislators, that they are passing laws that are not impacting or inhibiting our ability to run our city as a home rule city.
Candidate Levison.
Thank you for this question. First of all, the idea of a home rule city allowing the state and the governor to preempt our zoning and building code rights is atrocious. I was on the Colorado Municipal League Policy Committee for years when I was previously on council and elected twice to their executive board, and the number one issue always for cities is preemption. I think that you have those unintended consequences when preemption has you swallow a new proposal from the governor wholesale. And the City of Longmont staff maybe should have thought a little bit ahead about what these unintended consequences were before they just agreed to everything. I think that having those mandates from the governor, we need to stand up to them, number one. But number two, when you look at the neighborhood I live in, historic East Side neighborhood, our neighborhood went downhill when in the 60s and 70s, a lot of these homes were broken up and we had a lot of transient renters there in group homes.
Candidate Christ.
Thank you. Okay, first I want to address scarcity in housing. I actually have young adults in my family, and there are a lot of apartments out there available, but they're just too expensive. And when I talk to people who have moved here for business and have jobs, they say it wasn't especially that hard to find a house. So I question the scarcity. Actually, and if it was supply and demand, the more we built, the lower the price would go. But in this environment, it's actually the prices are going up as we build more and more. For Senate Bill 1007, it put a business in a residential area, which is one of the issues with zoning. I think sometimes we take a hammer to try to solve problems, such as removing zoning, when zoning could have solved that problem. Right now there's a CML lawsuit to reestablish our home rule authority. I think Longmont should get in on that. And I think government needs to get out of the way of the market and also not try to control everything, but allow people to make some decisions for their community. Thank you.
In 2024, staff secured a $295,000 state grant to further Longmont's research on air quality data. And the funds are are expected to be available to Longmont this year. What do you see as the biggest contributors to Longmont's often poor air quality, and how would you utilize these funds to reduce it? Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you. So we have currently, we've been tracking our air quality very closely with a professor, Dr. Detlev Helmig, and in looking at, kind of just where we sit at Longmont, environmentally wise, we kind of just sit as a feeding, just like a pot where we kind of collect all this, the gas and oil emissions from Weld County. They just kind of come and fester over Longmont. So looking at the impacts that are happening from neighboring municipalities as well, and how that impacts our air quality. One of the big things that I'm looking at right now is even just some of the emissions coming from leaded airplanes, and making that transition and working towards unleaded. So if there's some little things that we have control over to do to reduce our air quality, or to improve our air quality and reduce those emissions, that would be my focus.
Candidate Levison.
We live in an area where air quality is dependent on what happens with the atmosphere, and it is a regional approach. I applaud Longmont getting this grant, but as Susie has pointed out, we are in kind of a unique situation geographically and where pollution collects. One thing that I think Shaquille has mentioned time over time is to get people out of their cars. However, it goes back to the transit issue. Do we have neighborhoods that are walkable? And frankly, do we have parents choosing a neighborhood school where their child could bike and walk to school as opposed to driving them 3 or 4 miles across town to another choice of schools? I think that we could, we've been monitoring oil and gas emissions for over 25 years now, and we need to continue doing that. But I really look to a regional solution to this problem, which is bigger than Longmont. I think collecting the data is great, and that's the first step to solving the problem.
Candidate Christ.
Well, this is a transportation fact, and I have heard another candidate talk about that, but about 60% of people don't work in Longmont but live in Longmont, and then another 60+% drive into Longmont for work but live somewhere else. So it would be nice to, and we can't control what people do, but it would be nice to have people that work in Longmont live in Longmont. That's one aspect. Salt Lake City had the same problem with the air pollution coming and staying, and they used compressed natural gas conversions to help reduce that. So I think some of our technology going forward in terms of electric vehicles, electric planes, and will help. I also am a big proponent of community hubs. What I did with Ward 1 is I was able to get the Northside Safeway filled. We would like to see more of a community feel there. I think if people take shorter trips, you'll have less emissions, and that is always helpful too. But here's the truth. Whatever problem we decide to solve, we can, because there's a solution to every problem. Thank you.
Candidate Dalal.
I agree with what has been said, which is that we need a regional approach. An important thing to understand is that there are things that are directly in the city's control, and there are things that are indirectly in the city's control. And this is a case where our indirect influence is much more powerful than our direct influence. One of the most important roles of the mayor is that they sit on the board of the Platte River Power Authority, which generates our electricity. Right now, a surprising amount of our electricity is coming from coal. By 2030, we expect to get to 88% clean electricity, and that is great both because it results in fewer emissions, but also because clean electricity is cheaper than dirty electricity. It turns out it's quite expensive to truck coal or natural gas across the country. right now, I have an electric vehicle because the environment is important to me. And it turns out that I can fill the tank, charge my battery for $5 as opposed to $30. And so this also winds up being a cost of living improvement for people if we can promote electrification at a systems level, because transportation is the greatest contributor to our poor air quality. And so we need to incentivize electrification of as many transportation methods as we possibly can.
For our final question of the forum, we will start with candidate Levison. What makes you the best candidate for mayor?
This is the closer. You said there wasn't a closer. I have 28 years of experience in this community. I've worked with a number of organizations, and as I mentioned in the opening statement, it comes down to experience. I have 8 full years on council, and what did I accomplish? An anti-poverty program for 5 years that actually grew families out of poverty. We have children that will not be poor their entire lives because their parents were able to climb out of poverty. Feeding children, I found money from programs at the National League of Cities to feed our children. I also have a lot of innovative ideas for programs that would absolutely be able to be accomplished. So again, experience is leveraging my skills, and this will get projects across the finish line, and it will also get everyone still engaged in Longmont. I have some really big ideas, and my experience really has driven a lot of innovation and accomplishments.
Candidate Christ.
Thank you very much. So I've worked in the local economy for 30 years, and I have to say that when people ask government to do things for them, they sort of begin a dependency cycle. And then what happens is that government also becomes a little bit controlling and requiring people to fall in line. And part of that leads to a lot of cost. In other words, a lot of permitting, a lot of costs. I have a list of 44 things that the state has instituted that are costing people about $1,500 more per year. I think it's actually up to $2,000 now as I look at it. I haven't even addressed the costs that the city has added on for businesses and for individuals. Cost of living is something that we can control by getting out of the market. We really are a council that should provide possibility for the free market. I have a business background, and I have a great deal of wealth that I can bring to the council and organizationally to the mayorship.
Candidate Dalal.
So I've never held elected office. This is my first time running for anything, and I am not a politician, and I have no aspirations for elected office outside the city of Longmont. I am in this for the city of Longmont. This is the level of government that matters to me. I think that bringing new ideas and new perspectives to this office is important because I am not mired in the details of how things have been done before. I'm focused on the outcome of what should we be doing and what is the way that we can alter the process in order to get the outcomes that serve people. I'm not focused on what is the process right now and how do we shove the right thing through the existing process. Even without having been elected, I've been able to make the city of Longmont a better place through my advocacy work, much of which has been behind the scenes. Through City Council, I've been able to convince the city to eliminate parking minimums, which lowers the cost of housing for every unit that is built that is not saddled with the cost of extra parking. 2 years before the city was considering liberalizing our rules around ADUs, I was pushing the city to do that. That is a way that we avoid preemption by being leaders in the community. And so I believe bringing that leadership quality which the mayor's office needs.
Candidate Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you. So I'm coming in with 5.5 years of experience of being on council from 2019 to today. But I also come in with a different, I have a son with a disability. I have a daughter who survived suicide. That thrust me into this role of advocacy and policy and how policy impacts working people, marginalized people. So I came forward with this intent of giving a voice to people who often feel left out of the conversation. So that was my big thrust into this work. I don't think city government should be, politicians and following and being those people that are at that, unattainable state and national level predominantly. That we are down here, we are community. I'm a working class person, and my husband's a plumber. We bring in our life experience, and that's what I'm bringing to my decision-making process.
On behalf of the League and EcoCycle, I would like to thank our candidates not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work. Thank you to our forum volunteers for their essential help. A huge thank you to our 2025 election sponsors, Elevations Credit Union, Inspire Hair and Salon, Christina's Luxuries, Kaplan and Ernest, attorneys at law. A short and sweet reminder that donations to the League of Women Voters of Boulder County help us continue our education and advocacy in the community. Donate today at www.lwvbc.org. For more information about the upcoming election and the candidates, please go to the League's premier voter information guide, vote411.org. I'll say it again because it's important and it's a great website, vote411.org. And as always, remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you for coming, and as we adjourn, please join me in a big round of applause for our candidates. Thank you, everyone.